Hello, I'm the FanFic Critic. I read it, you listen. Star Trek. Who in this world does not know about Star Trek? Star Trek has been a cult phenomenon since the 60s. And ever since the original series aired, there has been many spin-offs. The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, and there's also been a lot of movies. The most current movie airing in 2009. So, I guess you guys are assuming that we're going to be reading a fanfic involving Star Trek. Well, you guessed right. Not is it just Star Trek, it is based off of the 2009 universe of Star Trek, with those characters. This story is called Do It Justice by Gothic Cheshire. It's rated K, it's in English, it's friendship, it's J. Kirk and Uhura, and it has 12 reviews. So let's not waste any time and get into this fanfic. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the very first story that I have ever written with a focus on Naota Uhura. I tried to do her character justice and hope I succeeded. This is Jen all the way around, as much as it focuses on Uhura's changing regard for Jim, which has naturally been done before, but I couldn't help myself. Here's a fun fact before I get into this story. I've actually had the chance to talk to this author, and apparently they hated Uhura in the 2009 movie. They hate her character completely. So this fanfic is going to be very interesting. Will they vilify her? Who knows? Let's read and find out. Uhura watched quietly as more and more people began falling into the gravitational charm that was James Tiberius Kirk. She watched in scorn as they began falling for the charismatic captain that had more balls than brains. She watched those charming smiles, those teasing flirts, and couldn't help but feel like the bridge and the entire crew was falling into lunacy. It was a strange feeling, being the one sane one in the ship, aside from Spock, luckily. But she was taking the time to study the crew and her captain, and attempt to figure out what the hell it was that the crew saw in him. It had started out tamely enough at first. Only McCoy had been good friends with him, and it was her personal opinion that the doctor was as crazy as the captain was. But then, the Karu Sulu had fallen into the gravity as well. Sulu was a man with a good head on his shoulders. He was cool, but not overbearing and arrogant about this fact. Kirk couldn't walk down the corridor without strutting like a peacock. It was hard to wrap her head around, but it wasn't impossible. Kirk had saved them from falling to his death after all. The man probably thought he owed him something. So it was with that logical explanation that she dismissed it and moved on. But then Pavel Chekhov had begun falling into the captain's orbit, and it was different with him. Chekhov did not gravitate around him so much as he did worship him. He looked up to him as an idol and a hero, and Uhura thought that he was obviously, but unfortunately, insane. After all, there was a lot of pressure when one was a child prodigy. But then the rest of the crew started falling for him. It was gradual at first, but she slowly began hearing the rest of them singing his praises. It was then that she got a little worried. Was it possible that they were seeing something that she wasn't? She resolved to talk to him a bit more and find out. Stage 1 was to put into operation next shift. It was another charting mission, and it made Jim even more intolerable than ever. It was only later that she realized that she might have had a better chance of seeing why people liked him so much if she had gotten the chance to talk to him when he was in a good mood. As it was, as soon as Uhura turned around and began trying to talk to him, that he proceeded to prove exactly how little he had changed. Uhura left that shift feeling annoyed, petty, degraded, and absolutely humiliated. It had started out cordially enough, but then Jim had decided to make a comment. I always wondered what it was like to date one of my teachers. Never was quite up to it. So how was it, Naota? I don't know if I said her name right, sorry. His smile had made her want to shove him out an airlock. The others on the bridge stiffened as well, eyes widening slightly. Spock had stiffened as well, and that was what had prompted her reply. "I'm sorry, Captain, but I think I missed the order that made that your business, and it's Uhura, or Lieutenant, Captain." His smile dropped, but he picked it right back up. "Well, whenever you'd like to train techniques, I'm here." He spread his arms to the side, and Uhura glared at him, her eyes promising horrible things would happen to his person should he not shut up. The rest of the shift was spent in silence, at least between the two. The rest were talking quietly, Jim joking with the two at the helm, Scotty moving to join them. They spent the rest of the time joking and laughing. The only two that weren't were Uhura and Spock. I almost said Spark. It was only 2 days later that Uhura thought she might be seeing what it was the rest of were seeing. It was a horrible excuse for a mission, right near the neutral zone, and that was when it happened. Klingons attacked the ship. Nyota was almost positive that they would die there. Jim was a young captain, and sure he had saved the Earth, but he was inexperienced, untired, and Uhura was almost positive that she'd get the chance to say "I told you so" before they were disintegrated. She was wrong. Jim dropped the teasing air and became serious, his eyes spitting sparks. It was amazing to watch as he calmly told the Klingons that they had two choices, surrender or die. Not quite that bluntly, but it was obvious what he meant. But the way he said it told them quite simply that those were the only two options, and he could and would back it up. The Klingons hadn't been too happy about that, expectedly, and had signed off angrily, and immediately Kirk had ordered for weapons to be locked. They didn't need to worry about shields. He had already ordered them up the moment the Klingons came close. And for Chekhov to fire at will. Sulu and Chekhov were a team, the two of them piloting and firing in perfect sync, but it was Kirk's quiet presence behind them, calmly issuing orders and bracing them, that kept their minds on their training. She could almost say it was his firm belief in them that let them prevail. They managed to knock out the ship's shields and her weapons, requesting the Klingons' immediate surrender. Unsurprisingly, they didn't, opting instead to self-destruct. But when that was over, he immediately went back to his cocky, arrogant self, and Uhura wanted to smack him. Their first away mission gave her another reason to wonder. Jim had bullied his way into going down to the planet, and things were going well. For a while. A few hours later saw the beginnings of panic flashing along the ship. The away mission party hadn't checked in. Spock, who had the con at the time, set out to figure out what had happened. It was distressing, and Uhura had to admit to feeling some concern for her captain, and for the team. As much as she thought that Jim was a conceited moron, she didn't wish death on him. It was with this in mind that she took to request contact with the planet with the full force of her unimpressive will. It was therefore unsurprising when she finally made contact with the leader of the people. It proved to be unproductive, and Uhura wanted nothing more than to hurt them. She knew that they were hiding something, but she had no proof. They were on their own. When Jim's voice crackled over the speakers requesting immediate beam-up, relief spread throughout the bridge, possibly through the rest of the ship. It was short-lived. When the away team was beamed up, Uhura found out through Spock exactly how bad it was. The captain was nearly dead, the rest of the team suffering from various wounds, but nothing as bad as the captain's. They have like little quotes in it, quoting captain. This had made Uhura think about why, but she shortly dismissed it when the captain proceeded to flirt with every single one of McCoy's nurses, antagonizing the doctor himself, even when he was trying to help him, and basically terrorized the entire staff. The only thing that almost made her think otherwise was the fact that the crew that had been on the away mission with him was absolutely devoted to him. It made her wonder what exactly it was that had happened down there, but she never asked. So it continued. More and more away missions, more near-death experiences, and then their first crew death. Jim presided, and the ceremony held more of a celebratory feel than the grieving that she was sure that most would have wanted. She didn't notice the way the late lieutenant's friends came to the captain in near tears and thanked him for honoring his wishes. He wanted to be remembered for what he was like, wanting his friends to remember him with fondness and happiness that he was moving on, not grieve for the fact that he was gone and forget to live their lives. But still, Uhura said nothing and just grieved and glowered in silence. 2 months later, Spock successfully made the captain take him on an away mission as well. This was the moment when Spock began to fall into the captain's gravitational pull. She didn't know what it was that he was seeing. She didn't know what it was that finally pushed Spock from the level-headed science officer into one of Jim's friends.